were actually in the Army in DC on 9/11. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah. So I had just joined like a year earlier. I was in nursing school at Walter Reed on 9/11. So obviously, like, no one was expecting it. So it doesn't even make sense to say we weren't expecting it. But we were, my entire platoon was going through nursing school at Walter Reed. And my unit, my platoon was at the United States Soldiers and Airmen's Home. There was like 10 or 11 of us that were like not quite at Walter Reed. We're just like 3 miles away or whatever. And so I want to just answer that question first of how do I teach students this before I get into it. Basically, what I do is I use a presentation where I like align a bunch of video clips and like maps and stuff of what happened that day with how I experienced it that day. So on one side, this is what happened, and I'll show the news with, I think it's Al Roker, but I'm not positive, saying like, it's quiet, too quiet. And I'm like, yeah. And then I'll show right after that, okay, so this is me at 8:58. So we, as the first plane hit, we were just like doing rounds. And when, you know, we were in the break room as a second plane hit, talking in disbelief, and then drove back madly through Washington, D.C. We saw what we thought was the second plane. I mean, you don't just see planes over cities, so I'm assuming that was it. And then we drove back to Walter Reed, and we, you know, went through a furious, we drew weapons and gave blood and did all kinds of other stuff. And as I explained to my students, but nobody could make any phone calls that day. All the cell phone lines on the East Coast were jammed. And they asked us for volunteers to go down to the Pentagon at like roughly noon, something like that. So we had about a squad of soldiers go down to the Pentagon for to help the already triaged patients on the lawn there for like 3 or 4 hours or something. So I don't remember the lady's name, but I helped one of the patients that had this like glass blast injury from like, you know, like a little above chest high all throughout her arms. You know, she had just worked for the DOD, but she had glass injuries all throughout her face and scalp and arms. And I was just there with her, reassuring her, you know, trying to get IVs in her and trying to evac her out of there in disbelief while the firefighters are trying to evacuate more patients. So I'm not trying to take too much time, but
No, thank you. No, this is really great because your experience is so unlike anyone else tonight, because you were on the front lines.
That's why I got into teaching. You know,
yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you. So you got into teaching after, first of all, thank you for your service and thank you for what you did that day and what you did in the service. But so when did you decide to go into teaching? Were you in the military a little longer after that?
Yeah, so I did like another 7 years, six years in the military after that. I got out in 2007, but I got into teaching because I was like in Iraq, and I was a nurse in Iraq for prisoners of war, but that had nothing to do with it really. I showed like new nurses or new medics how to do basic medical procedures. And I thought it was super cool. So I'd show them how to do like new IVs or blood draws or, you know, whatever, just basic medical stuff. And I'd see these people get better, like way better at, I thought I was pretty good, but I'd see them get way better at it than I was. So just seeing them develop this confidence with it, and then going to Hawaii, where I was for the next 3 years, and training new recruits to do the same thing, and just seeing them go from very nervous to that. And I was like, well, I just have to teach. I don't even like nursing that much. I have to get into teaching. And it just made too much sense to do social studies.